Welcome to the Traditional Dad Podcast. I'm Nathan Ross, your host, and today we have with me a guy who's kicking off the first podcast of the show. Tell me about yourself, what you do, how old you are, and what you do as a job.
So my name's Chris. I work in a vape shop.
Oh,
27 years old, and I've got three little boys.
excellent. You married, single?
Currently separated and probably going to go through a divorce.
Oh man, so how long? Okay, so that's a talk in itself as well, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
so are the kids? Do your kids live with you?
No. We sort of share custody between them.
Okay, so how often do you have your children?
I have them as often as I can, but
Yeah.
we have a rota in place so that it's as fair as can be, and neither me or their mum has to go an extended period without seeing them.
Oh, okay, because I'm sure there's a lot of dads going to be watching this now going, right, I'm a single dad, or I'm going through the system, or I'm going through a divorce and stuff like that. So you're probably going to reach out for a lot of dads that way. Talk to me about the setup that you've got at the moment then. So do you live, your kids, you see often your kids and all that sort of thing. You're working dad. Talk to me about how you got to this position of going down the divorce route or marriage split up and how it's affected you and stuff like that.
So obviously, I feel like a relationship breakdown you kind of can't avoid. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Obviously the children, they play a big part in it. They're the ones that are going to miss out the most.
Yeah.
So as it kind of stands, we've been separated for about 8 months, and for the first sort of 5 or 6 months, there was no real sort of rhyme or rhythm to it. It was just I was having them every weekend essentially.
Yeah.
And my youngest, who's only 2, he was, especially during the 6-week holidays, he was near enough living with me for that entire time.
Oh,
So, he was kind of my emotional support blanket,
yeah, of
if you
course.
like, during that time.
Yeah.
But then, recently there was a bit of a blowout between me and my ex,
Mhm.
which led to the rota sort of being created so that it was fair and, it's amicable and it's
Yeah.
fair for both parties to have a bit of time to themselves, because
Perfect.
working Monday to Friday and then having the children all weekend,
Yeah.
I had no sort of real respite, no time to, have to myself.
Yeah, cool. So talk to me about your history of family. Like, were you brought up with a mum and dad, traditional setup, or, and I suppose going into this marriage, you expected that was it, this is going to be life and things like that?
Yeah, I think when you go into a marriage, you kind of the whole point of being married is you're making that lifelong commitment to someone,
Mm.
and clearly it never, well, not necessarily never, it didn't end up like that for
Yeah.
me and her. I would very much like to try and sort of bring something back, but
Yeah.
the other party doesn't quite agree with me on that.
Yeah.
But where I came from, until the age of 8, I was living with my mum and dad together. I had a little brother and a little sister. Then they split, and I ended up having 5 brothers and sisters in total. From both sides. So I've come from a
Yeah.
big family
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. How did that split up of your mum and dad? Do you feel like it affected you in any way, or did you see any patterns that you thought, oh, that's probably because of that, this, and the other?
Um, I I wouldn't say I had a bad upbringing. I would definitely say that, I do feel a little bit like I was kind of passed from pillar to post a lot
Yeah.
growing up. But I think that was also down to my personality before I kind of became a dad myself and actually, hang on, I need to grow up now. I need to mature and, do my
Yeah.
best.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was down to my behavior, but
Yeah.
I was sort of passed from pillar to post. I never sort of really had for example, me oldest little brother and sister, they both grew up with my dad.
Yeah.
And then obviously the ones that came my half brothers and sisters, they grew up with whichever side. But for me, it was kind of like, I'm here now, I'm here now, I'm here now. And there was
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah, and did you feel that growing up as well, that affected you with the no foundation, no structure? Did you feel like you were maybe feeling like, oh, I don't actually belong anywhere because I'm passed from pillar to post?
Yeah, I think there definitely was that, and obviously I had a stepmom. I've still got the same stepdad.
Mm.
So I think that, at the age of sort of 8 and then kind of immediately going from I've got mum and dad to in almost immediately, I've now got two extra parents,
Yeah.
and there was going to be clashes there.
Yeah.
That definitely sort of made me feel very sort of out of place at that age, and it took a long time for me to kind of come to terms with the fact that, okay, this is my life now.
How it is. Yeah, totally, totally. And so when you got with your so-called ex-wife, shall we say, did you go in the mind frame of, I want a happy family, I want this family to be together forever because of my upbringing, or how did you mentally go into the?
So, as I say, I had a girlfriend when I was only 16,
Yeah.
and that was only a sort of year and a half, 2 year thing. But it was that relationship that kind of it didn't screw me up. It just planted the idea in my head of, I want a baby, and at that time, I never realized that I want a baby was actually, I want to be a dad. I had
Yeah.
no idea
Yeah, of
what
course.
to
Yeah, yeah,
expect from that.
yeah.
And I think that from that relationship, then I kind of, I always had that idea in my head. And then between her and my, now ex-wife,
Yeah.
I had another relationship for 2 years. Now, she did end up pregnant. It was accidental, and she chose that it wasn't the time for her, and she did what she did to
Okay.
stop that from happening.
So how did that
Um,
impact you?
that definitely impacted me, because I think with the procedure that she had done, it was definitely not just a take a pill and that's it. So it was a little bit further along than just the
Okay.
standard, I'm pregnant, I'm going
Yeah,
to do this.
yeah, yeah,
And, but I think that she at that time kind of didn't know at first. So obviously being the way that I was and knowing that I wanted to be a dad, I didn't beg and plead, but I made it very clear that, look, I would love to do that. I will be there for
yeah,
that baby.
yeah,
And then obviously that never happened. So when I did meet my wife, yeah, it was very much, love at first sight.
yeah, yeah,
And yeah, it was a case of, I want to be with this person and I want to have a family with this person.
yeah.
Um, I mean, when obviously I met her, she already had a child that was one from a previous relationship. So, for the past 8 years, I've also been a stepdad for the past eight
Wow,
years as well.
wow. So you took on the commitment of bringing out up someone else's child and being their dad. Then you had your own children. So then you had this family unit. And how I've always wondered, and I've always wanted to ask the question, like, how did you treat the child that wasn't yours differently, or was it always just the same because you'd brought them up from a young age? You just adopt it as one of your own anyway.
So it's this is the question that is sort of kind of hard to answer, because I have had people say that, oh, like you kind of treat him differently, and I've never seen myself as, purposefully doing that. I
Mm.
think I've always kind of looked at it in a sort of way that, right, his mum and his dad have got 50-50 of him.
Yeah,
So it's not necessarily about, oh, I'm favoritizing my three over him. It
yeah,
was always a case of, well, he has got his own dad, so
yeah,
like where up to now my three of, when they have Christmas, they've got one Christmas. When they have birthdays, they've got one birthday.
yeah,
I
yeah,
always kind of looked at it as he's got two,
yeah. Cool.
because he's got one with us, and then he's got one with his dad as well.
So you've always been quite
Um,
respectful, knowing that his dad's always been around. So you've always allowed him to entertain and have that relationship with his
yeah,
own dad
yeah,
as well, which is probably the most decent way to do, really, isn't it?
yeah.
Totally. Okay, so you've brought up this child and three other kids of your own, and then you've come to this situation where relationships broken down. I'll ask the question: how have you coped from the moment you did you leave the family home?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I think the breakdown of the relationship. It was a long time coming,
Yeah,
and when it finally did happen, I will be very honest. In terms of mental health wise, I did take a significant dip. To put it into a real sort of perspective. we, you know, as an entire family, we lost my little brother last year.
Wow.
And it just so happened that, you know, 2 or 3 weeks later was when we were planning to get married. So it was kind of extreme down,
Yeah.
extreme up,
Yeah.
no sort of time to process anything. And then, you know, once it all kind of started to hit, my mental health started to deteriorate anyway.
Yeah.
Um, and I just sort of never recovered from it. And I think that the strain that it put on the relationship between me and her never really recovered from it either.
Yeah.
So, you know, when we did eventually split up, you know, it was very toxic. And yeah, on my end, I
Mm.
definitely, you know, spiraled out of control for quite a while. And it's only sort of recently that I can say that I'm like at the point now of I can start to kind of breathe again, if
Yeah,
that
yeah,
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, and I totally get that. And I think society looks at men that if they start talking about mental health or talking about hitting dark moments or weak moments, then it's frowned
Yeah.
upon, isn't it? And people don't want to talk about it and share about it. And I'm quite opposite. I think men need to talk more and share more. And I
I'm exactly the same.
yeah,
You know, I went to the doctors. You know, I've always had. So you know, growing up, I had ADHD. I've
hmm,
still got ADHD. You know, I take medication for it.
yeah,
But from a young age, you know, sort of 16, 17, I've always been on antidepressants as well.
hmm,
So, you know, when this all happened, I kind of, you know, went to the doctors and told them how I was feeling.
yeah,
And, you know, it very much was a case of I feel like I've just been thrown a load of pills and that was that.
yeah,
Whereas in the brief times where I would end up speaking to my ex, she
hmm.
would say, "Oh yeah, you know, I've got my own pills, and you know, I'm going through therapy, and all this has been set up." And for me, it was very much a case of I've just had a load of pills thrown at me and said, you know,
And you're
try
on
this
your
one.
own. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
on your own, and that's it, so to speak. Yeah. And I'm finding this more and more. The more I talk to dads, and the more I talk to dads that are going through this process of separation or going through courts or whatever, that when they are feeling low or as a needing something to help, the doctors are literally just saying, like, take these antidepressants, you're on
yeah.
your own, so to speak. There's no actual backup after going to court. Take these antidepressants, but here's a plan to help you get further help.
No,
Um,
there is no plan, you know,
yeah.
and it is very hard because you know you do see it all the time where you know if you see a girl or a woman on Facebook putting something up saying you know oh I'm feeling this way or I wish I had someone to talk to you know X Y and Z, you will see you know a lot of people will interact with that post and you know will interact with them.
Yeah,
Whereas if I share something as a little cry for help on Facebook, I
yeah.
get my mum, my nan, and my sister liking it. That's about it.
Or you get your mates taking the piss out of you.
Yeah,
What,
exactly.
like, oh, do some banter or something like that, and you're like, actually,
Yeah,
you know, I'm actually reaching out, and I tell you, it's weird how it's perceived in two different ways, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And I think this is why I think, especially dads, because we're expected to be strong all the time, aren't we? Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Expected to have this forefront of we cope with anything. Doesn't matter how we matter. It doesn't matter how we feel. As long as we get everything done and blah 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 blah. Where let's look at the situation. You've had to move out the family home. There are probably times at night when you're by yourself with no one around, feeling lonely, missing your family. They're the times there it can get
Oh
quite
yeah, it was almost you know it was almost every night
yeah
that kind of feeling you know and I think one of the biggest parts for me and you know I've said this to everyone especially at the beginning for the first sort of you know 4 or 5 months going from you know being able to come home every single day
yeah
say goodnight to my kids every single day wake up in the morning take them to school every single day to not having that it was you know it was the worst feeling in the
yeah
world you know
yeah
you kind of sat there and you know like right now I know that they're safe I know that they're with their mum
yeah.
but you know I'm sitting here right now thinking you know are they asleep you know have they had a good time at school today you know I don't know the answers to these questions because I haven't been with them.
No, no, and I think unless you've been in that situation, which I've been myself in that situation, and I think unless you've been in that situation where you're, because people can say, oh, well, you're going to see him in a few days, or come on, man, go to the pub or watch football. You get to play games and all this sort of thing. Once you've been in that situation where you've had it and then it's
Yeah.
gone, then feelings are quite, I don't know what the best word to
They're
say.
quite raw. They're quite raw to
They are, yeah,
experience.
yeah,
A good example, you know, I'm living with my dad at the minute, my dad and my stepmom, and you know, my little sister, not so little, she's 21.
yeah.
She lives here as well. You know, and she's been an absolute rock during all of this for me. She really has supported me, but it's some of the things that you notice. It's one of the things I notice is, you know, once the children leave to go to their mums, you kind of come back to the house and you look around and you see the toys or like a little bit of a mess that they'll have left.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you know, I get told, you know, even at this grand age of 27, that, you know, my room's not tidy enough. But I
yeah.
kind of, you know, I sit there and I look and I'm like, I don't like the feeling of tidying up after they've left, because I know then that, oh, okay, I'm going to be going a day or two without seeing them now.
Course, yeah, yeah, and it's a, like you say, it's a raw feeling, isn't it? It's a raw feeling of having going from taking them to school, seeing them after school, tucking them to bed, blah blah blah, to then not having it as much. It's a very raw feeling. So, how have you overcome that? Because obviously you went from I suppose the first 3 or 4 months or 5 months, like you said, you was in a dark place where you weren't seeing your kids as much, and it was every weekend and blah blah blah. How have you managed to move forward and be in that place where you can start to breathe again?
So I think definitely I've come to realize that it's not just about the quantity of time that I have with them.
Mm.
It's the quality of the time that I
Amazing.
spend
Yeah.
with them. So, you know, I try my best to, you know, get them out whenever I can, or, you know, if I have got them. And, you know, like yesterday, for example, I'm not sure where you're from. I'm from Stoke.
Okay, you're down the
Um,
road from me then. I'm Birmingham, so
I thought I recognised the accent, you know.
I'm sorry.
Um, So, you know, it was, wait, are we on Tuesday today or Monday?
It's Monday.
On Sunday, then, for
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
you know, my eldest, who's 7, he'd been asking all weekend if he could go on his BMX, because we've got a big green out the front, which, you know,
Right.
he loves to play on.
Yeah.
And I sat there and I was like, you know, I don't really want you going out on the front on your own at the best of times,
Yeah.
but with the weather's been and everything like that, you know, I didn't really fancy letting him go out and do that. So we ended up watching a film. We ended up watching Lord of the Rings, to be
Oh,
honest.
quality, quality.
Um, but you know, it was a case of, you know, instead of just sitting there and going on my phone, or, you know, saying to them like, go do this, and I'm just going to sit here. It was like, no, you know, we'll all sit down. And we'll try and all sit down and watch the
Yeah.
film. But you've
Yeah.
got 3 young kids, doesn't always work like that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Everyone wants to do something differently, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So it's about more being, and I think that's a great thing to take away, is that it's about being more in the moment and being present rather than, because let's be real, you could have your kids every weekend and not be present, couldn't you?
Yeah,
And
100%. One thing that I have noticed, and you know, on the times where I have spoken to them mum
mm,
in a nice manner when we haven't been
yeah, yeah,
arguing. One of
yeah,
the things that I have said and I know is that, you know, since we have split, the bonds that I've got with my kids, like it could not be stronger than it
yeah,
has been now. You know, like I love the bedtime routine, for example,
yeah,
like
yeah,
giving them all a shower and stuff like that. You know, and even like just little things like giving them a shower and then drying their hair with a hairdryer. I know
yeah.
that a lot of people wouldn't do that, and you know,
But
every night I have them, I find myself going to my sister like, just nicking your hairdryer because they
yeah,
love doing it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's those little small things that you wouldn't think about unless you've been in that situation.
Yeah,
No, yeah,
exactly.
and I think there's so many dads out there that will be able to relate to that, because unless you've never had it, then you won't miss it. But if you've had it before, and then suddenly them little times that are so, they're minor, but they're massive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's things that you look at when you've never experienced it, and you think like that. What's the big deal?
Yeah,
But then when you're actually experiencing it and then you look back, you kind of go, well, that's why it's a big deal, because you know, they're going to remember when they grow up. You can turn around to them, and when they're 18 and you sat in the pub with them, you can, oh, you used to dry your hair with a hairdryer, and hopefully, I
Yeah,
don't know about the 2-year-old, but my
yeah,
5-year-old
yeah,
and 7-year-old, hopefully they'll be like, yeah, I remember that.
yeah. It's those small quality moments that, like, as us as we're adults, we remember like what our moms did, dads did when we were younger. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah,
suppose it's that we're setting those memories up for them, aren't we? Which is a
yeah,
key massive thing. So where you are at now regarding your children and as a dad, if someone was going through a breakup or going through the court system, luckily you've not been through the court system because obviously you've dealt with it outside of that
yeah.
amicably as best as possible. So what would be your biggest advice for someone that's going through the same situation as you now?
Um, Even though it is going to feel like the end of the world, and it's going to be it's so much easier to say it than to do it. And, I would never expect anyone to be able to just do it like that. You've just got to bear with it. And, you've got to listen to the people that are around you. You've got to not shut yourself off,
Mm.
because I shut myself off for quite a while, and I lost who I was as a person, and it did get to the point where there was some times where my kids would come round, and I could do nothing. I know it sounds daft, but men do try. There would be times where I'd come round, and my youngest would be like, Daddy, why are you always crying?
Mm.
And you can't control your emotions, but you've got to have an outlet, find someone, or some people or something that you can sort of sit there and go, I can rely on this, and I can use this as a break,
Totally.
and actually listen to what people are saying. Because if I'd have listened to people from the start, I feel like where I'm at now with their mom and with the kids would be much better of a position.
Yeah.
But in those moments, especially when your emotions are so raw, it's I know
Absolutely.
best,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you don't know best. You do need to listen to people, and you need to take the support.
I think the hardest thing is because when you're in it, you can't see out of it, can you?
You
So
can't. You can only see it from your point of view.
your lens view. So you're seeing things that are making you angry, bitter. You can't quite understand things. You justify your own behavior, whether it's right or wrong. And so when you're in it, it's really hard. And listening to someone who's out of it and then giving you some advice. And I remember likewise myself when I went through many, many years ago with my older daughter, and you get so caught up in the anger and the bitterness towards the reason why it's happened or the split up and stuff like that. You end up becoming trying to get one over on each other, don't you? And things like that. And
But it very much, it very much so is that, like, don't want to get like too personal into
yeah,
it, but
yeah,
it's like it very much feels to me that, like, since the split up, it's just been a one-up game. It's right, I found out that you slept with this person, I'm going to go and sleep with this person, and
yeah,
and it just kind of it stems from there, and then
yeah,
it's all, well, I've done this for the kids, oh well, I've done this for the kids, and then
yeah,
you start nitpicking, and you
yeah,
start,
yeah.
and
And
it's just
it doesn't solve
it's
anything,
not
does it?
healthy. It's not healthy for the kids,
No.
because at the end of the day, it's always the kids that suffer in these situations. And I think that one of the things that I've definitely come to realize is the fact that every decision that you do make, you've got to set an example for the kids. Like,
Totally.
those kids, they're looking at me, they're looking at my ex, and they're learning to become people by our actions.
Yep, totally.
And that's one of the biggest realizations that I had was, maybe I shouldn't be, treating their mum in this way, because yeah, okay, there was a breakdown, but what kind of person would I be if I was to teach my kids that this is how you should be treating them?
It's true. It's so true.
When
I read a quote the other day, and it was like your kids view other men and women through the lens of how they view you.
Yeah,
Um, they're seeing you treat them on with disrespect and anger and all that sort of thing. They're going to think that's normal.
yeah,
And we're not perfect as dads. We're not by far means, and we still learn as we go through. Even now, we always continue to learn. But I think if we can try and act right and do the right thing just for our kids' sake,
yeah, 100%. Like, and I think that that's also the advice, more specific to sort of my situation. If anyone's going through a breakup or whatever,
Yeah,
is, what I think what people have got to realize is, it doesn't matter the circumstances. Is whoever the woman is that's the mother of their kids,
yeah,
that's it. It's the mother of your children.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
for me, it's like I've kind of sat down and gone, do you know what? It doesn't matter if I love her. It doesn't matter if I hate her. You're the mother to my children. I'm always going to have love for you. So
yeah,
I will support you and I will do what I can for you. And that doesn't matter if you've got a new partner or if you hate me or you don't speak to me or whatever, that if you contact me, like, the support will be there
yeah.
because you are the mother to my kids, and that's what's most important.
Yeah, totally, man. I second that definitely. I think we need to learn more as dads to be like that towards our ex-partner or mother's kids or whatever whatever they are, because
Yeah,
our kids are sponges, aren't they? Learning from us all the time about how we act, our mannerisms, our characters, our mindset, our values, our standards. And if we're not setting the right impression, then they're going to learn that, aren't they? So
exactly.
my one question would be, what advice would you give to a dad going through your situation, especially when it comes to the mental health side of things? Because it sounds like you hit rock bottom quite a few times over the last 8 months, over maybe the last year, maybe since your little brother passed away. And so it's probably been an emotional roller coaster for you, but also a mental roller coaster for you. So what advice would you give?
The mental health side of it is, it's a very hard one for me to even process now because I'm still not there with it all. I'm doing my best and I'm trying my hardest.
Yeah,
But I think that is what it is. You've just got to persevere. And as I say, take up your family, take up your friends, reach out to them. Don't sit around waiting for people to come to you. If you've got a best friend, or if you've got, your mom, your dad, a brother, like with me, my little sister, use those people to allow you to try and sort of heal. Because if you don't, you will go down into a spiral, and it is very, very hard to get out of that. Like one thing that I found that I was doing, is I became, not massively, but I became a little bit reliant on alcohol.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
I didn't like that. I didn't like the fact that I wasn't able to sleep unless I had had a drink. Um, and again, it's only over the sort of past month or so that I've been able to sort of knock that on the head and say, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to waste money on it. I don't want to, think about the health effects that it's having on me. And I didn't want to become reliant on it, because that's where you, like you say, your mental health is then going to further deteriorate because you're reliant on something.
and I think we try and use it as a coping mechanism, don't we? We look for things to learn as a coping mechanism. And I think I've got to clarify a few things while people are watching this. We're not doctors. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah,
You're not a doctor. So we're just giving advice. And so if you are feeling like you are rock bottom, then go and seek help from a professional, a doctor, someone like that. But I think from what Chris is personally trying to say is that reach out to people that know you as well, that want to
yeah,
help, that want to support you, that probably sometimes the signs aren't there, and sometimes people don't know what you're going through. And so just saying, look, I need someone to talk to, I need some little help, or I need a bit of advice. Can you help me? And like I said, we said at the beginning, like most men are just closed books, and it takes a lot. Like it would have taken you a lot to say, guys, I need help, or going to the doctor or something like that. So it's a massive thing that we need, an action that a lot of men and a lot of dads need to take in moving step forward to hopefully learning to deal with their mental health.
yeah, definitely. It's literally a case of, like, men cry, men have feelings, like we feel just as much as anybody else does. We're just expected to deal with it more.
Totally.
But, we try to deal with it more, but it reaches a point where you can't fit anymore inside, and then it overflows.
And I think if we get to that point where it overflows, that's when frustration, anger, that's when we hit loneliness, we hit rock bottom. And
Yeah.
so
And that's when people then start to look at you as the problem.
yeah, totally, totally. And then that becomes you become seen as a problem, so you become the problem. And it's like a
Yeah.
circle then, doesn't it? So awesome, man. Have you got anything else you'd like to tell fellow tired dads, traditional dads, anything at all that would you feel would help them massively on their journey?
Um, just do your best to make memories with the kids that you've got, and doesn't necessarily mean take a picture with them. Sometimes just live in the moment, have it in your mind, because there's stories that I'm going to be able to tell my children that I won't have a picture or a video of because I saw it happen. I didn't pull my phone out to take it.
Yeah,
And all they're going to have is the story that I tell them,
yeah.
not just a, there you go, that's it. It's the
It's
story that I tell them.
it's so true, and I think we're so quick, aren't we, as society, to I was somewhere the other day and people were just videoing things. Like, instead of doing it on your phone, take a mental picture. Do you know what I mean? And we're so
Yeah,
quick now to get
definitely.
the phone out. Whereas this be and I think there's three things I want to take away from you at the moment in our podcast, and it's this: number one, be present. You know what I mean? Be
Yeah,
present with your children. Take the time out rather than being on your phone and letting them, even though you're there, you're not there. So number one, being present. Number two, seek help, because I think
yeah,
asking for help, seek help, get external people to come and help you. That's number two. And number three, acknowledging when you've gone wrong, because obviously
yeah,
you've done
100%.
things, you've done things that are wrong. You've not, probably not made the right choices or whatever. And understanding where you've gone wrong and moving on is probably a key thing as well that you've learned over the last few months.
Yeah, 100%. I think, one big realization is the fact that we're all a dad for the
Yeah.
first time. So everything you do, especially with like your eldest, for example, it's always the first time for you as well, not just them.
Yeah, yeah, and there's no manual, there's no perfect plan. We're all winging it as dads to try and be the best dad we can be.
Yeah, we are definitely
So,
winging it.
but mate, I appreciate your time, man. I really thank you for sharing your thoughts and sharing and being open and honest about your journey. Because, and I think the biggest thing that I'm going to take away is that you're still in it. You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah,
as dads, we think there's an end goal where we're going to be the perfect dad, where there isn't. You know what I mean?
no,
And I think you're still going through that process of trying to work it out, trying to figure it out, trying to control your mental health, trying to be the best dad you can be, trying to balance work, living at home, back at home with your mom and dad, getting to understand this new way of living. It's just balancing, juggling, and that is being a dad, isn't it? Through the whole of when they're
yeah,
older.
yeah,
Balancing, juggling, and just winging it as we go, so to speak.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I I appreciate your honesty, Chris, and I thank you for joining us on the podcast.
yeah. No, thank you for having me.
Hopefully, I'm going to get people to comment and reach out and stuff like that. So I'd love to have you back on, man, to explore some more down the line.
I'd definitely love that if you're open to that, I would love that. Yeah,
I feel like we just scratched the surface, and so I feel like we need to. I feel like
yeah,
there's a few more episodes in our talking that we can do to do a few more podcasts.
yeah, definitely.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for joining me, mate, and thank you for being on the Traditional Dad podcast. And I appreciate your time.
Yeah, no worries. Cheers.
Excellent, man. Have a fantastic night, man. I'll speak to you soon. Bye bye.
Cheers. Bye bye.